Hello, thanks for checking out this video. The title of my video today is The Reality of State Capitalism and the Anglo-American Empire. It's going to be a short video and I just want to clarify some very basic facts about reality of the world we live in here in North America, especially for white people, because I noticed that a lot of political discussion and narratives are just, in my opinion, completely nonsense, and they're all around me. And I think that people, especially on the right, need to be, just have a reality check every once in a while and kind of understand just some basic facts about how our country works. And not just people on the right, but everyone in general, so they don't get caught up in like manufactured culture wars or like race baiting crap. The reality of like being, if you're in Canada or the US, this is for white people in Canada and the US. And just to clarify, I'm a working class white guy, I'm 100% Western European, and I've lived in Canada my whole life, so that's my perspective on this. Today, we are living under state capitalism. We're not living in like a socialist country or a communist country, and Justin Trudeau wasn't a communist. And the hard reality of life in Canada is that this is state capitalism. The US is a worse form of it, but it's just state capitalism. And furthermore, we as white people living in these countries are part of something called the Anglo-American Empire, which is currently the dominant empire of the world, which is why our currency, American currency, and by proxy other Western European nations that are mostly white people have really valuable currencies. This is because the Anglo-American Empire, via the American military, asserts a global hierarchy over people through military dominance. That's why the US has military bases all over the world, and they force the rest of the world basically to adhere to an economic system that America is de facto always at the top of, because through the Federal Reserve and other institutions that are linked to the American government, which is really just a representative of the sort of Anglo-American Empire. They control the money, so they put this they enforce a global hierarchy on people militarily, and people that the nations that don't cooperate, that don't adhere to a U.S.-backed dollar and a fiat currency and stuff like that, they get taken out. So these are things that any conversation about like white supremacy or anything like that that conservatives are dealing with, they have to acknowledge that, and especially when it comes to immigration, because now in Canada, for example, 20% of our private workforce is composed of like foreign temporary workers and stuff like that, and it's made it almost impossible for someone like me to get a basic job around here. I live in Toronto, for example. The Dollaramas, the 7-Elevens, the Tim Hortons, all these places where I thought I'd always be able to get like a minimum wage job. Like I can't compete with these people because they can legally be paid less. So I don't get mad at immigrants, and especially the majority of the immigrants coming to Canada are from India. So you have this huge sentiment in anti-Indian like racism all around and stuff like that. And I get frustrated with people that are directing all of their anger at narratives about Jewish people and about Indians and stuff like that, because the reality is this is all just the logical outcome of state capitalism, and it is exactly, you should be punching up and understanding that like the Indians are just a cheaper workforce that are being exploited by our government, but also that they're granted these foreign temporary work permits by our government to get them in here because this is state capitalism, but they're not hired by the government. They're hired by private employers who hire them because it's $2 an hour cheaper to hire them. It's the employer class of people, not the government, that actually hires these immigrants. But also, a lot of these immigrants are here because they're necessary. We need them, and they've been lured in. For example, veterinarians. I have a close friend from India who's a veterinarian, and I know a lot of people where I'm from, back home in Norfolk County, which is a primarily white area, who have pets, and they can't get a veterinarian because there's not enough to go around. So we need to bring these people over, and then people are getting mad at them because our whole system is based on exploiting labor. But it also needs to be clarified that what's also happened is the government a long time ago cut the funding to our universities, and so our universities suddenly had no income. So they're basically to make up for the lack of funding from the government, they just started bringing in foreign students and charging them 3 times as much tuition to keep making profit. So that's one reason why our system also doesn't produce a lot of didn't produce a lot of locals or natives that were white people that ended up going to those professions, and instead they just import them and brain drain other countries of their best and brightest and bring them here. So again, we are living under state capitalism, and we're part of an That's why various currencies are worth more than others. And then there are other institutions like the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, and stuff like that. And what they do is they go to other places around the world, third world countries, and basically, if those countries try to have a democratic election where they elect a socialist leader to represent them as a people, the CIA usually just takes them out. And the CIA is linked to the Vatican as well. Those two organizations have always worked together. Because there are competitors to the Anglo-American Empire. It's, Russians and BRICS nations. Russia would like to make an alliance with Germany and take down the Anglo-American Empire. So the world is about empire and military force and imposing things on people, and then forcing other people to play by our currency. So also in the States, you see the MAGA movement, where a lot of conservatives are. Now what happens is people don't understand the problems of what's really driving them, so they scapegoat the wrong things. This is bad for two reasons. One, you have innocent victims who get scapegoated for the wrong problem, but then the problem itself continues on because they can't understand it. The problem itself is state capitalism. It's not these immigrants. ICE is removing all these people, and I'm seeing all these people I know in real life cheering, and every time there's the police brutality is out of control and people are disappearing. It's like 7% of the illegal immigrants that are being dealt with have any kind of link to crime. So really what's unsaid is that America is a predatory system that lures in a lot of their economy, especially the farm work and the labor and stuff. Local citizens won't do certain types of work for too low of money. So instead, employer class just lure in foreigners because our currency is always worth more. And then hire them. Sorry, hit the camera there. And so, again, the problems with immigration, and if you're worried about demographic displacement and stuff, I'm not. But these right-wing talking points, they need to understand that capitalism is the problem, and more than that, the type of Western capitalism that we practice, state capitalism, is intimately linked to the development of Protestantism and your white European history. Which again is enforcing itself on this isn't a voluntary system, other nations don't want to have America on top. It's just after World War II, which was the world wars were caused by European countries competing with each other, caused mass damage to the world. Huge amounts of before the world wars, the most deadly wars in history were between Catholics and Protestants. But then you had World War I and World War II, and they took these death tolls to new numbers. And the Anglo-American Empire nuked civilian cities in Japan to make a point that we're totally willing, we have no moral problem with nuking civilians, anything. So it's by force, and they make a point of that, right? This is all just to say that when we have a conversation today about the morality of illegal immigrants coming here looking for work, or how we should treat them, or even things about race and if white supremacy exists, and if Canadians or Canada as a nation is a part of a white supremacist empire and stuff, we have to just acknowledge these truths about the reality of why the world we live in is the way it is, and why people come here to work for our currency and stuff like that. And I'd like to see a lot of people on the right and a lot of these libertarians and stuff like that start punching up instead of down, and start identifying the real cause of their problems. The Fed, a natural product of having a fiat currency, which is necessary for a modern nation, is you have a small amount of inflation every year, like at 1% in Canada on average. That's not the cause of massive expenses rising for groceries. That's just corporate greed. These people don't seem to, they want to blame everything on the Fed and a small amount of inflation when they just can't recognize corporate greed. It's ridiculous. All of these things come back to just the natural cancerous nature of state capitalism. So until people acknowledge that, and acknowledge that white people today are privileged in the sense that we live in a world I'm not, I'm expressing how as a white guy I'm now kind of screwed from being able to find a job right now, but I'm not mad at the immigrants for this. I recognize that this system doesn't give a fuck about people like me, and it threw me overboard a long time ago, and I think all the working class people should unite, because we're the majority of people that have to do all this shitty labor now for these fucking cancerous parasite rich people. And once people start to, even these conservatives that are so worried about their racial demographics, once they realize what causes replacement, instead of getting sidetracked with stupid anti-Semitic conspiracies, and just identify capitalism the cause, then we can start to make some real progress, right? So that was the point of my video today, is just to kind of make a reality check about being part of the Anglo-American Empire and living under state capitalism as a white person, for other conservative, for conservative people and right people to kind of really understand this. So hopefully I got through to somebody today. Hopefully the rest of you that already knew this enjoyed the video. And like and subscribe to my channel. We'll see you guys in the next video.